no sound in it? Now there is. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for the introduction, Arlindo. As you know, my name is Peter Symes. Some of you know me already if you've been to some of the previous diving talks like I have. I'm delighted to welcome you to this panel discussion, Beyond the Surface, Ocean Literacy and the Path to Conversation. Just to introduce myself briefly, I am originally trained. I got a graduate degree in biology. I specialized in aquatic ecology and aquatic ecosystems. And I also have a degree in media and communication. And the reason why I chose media and communication to supplement my science degree is I early on had a firm belief that you might be the most excellent scientist in the world and come up with interesting findings, discoveries, but it will matter not if you couldn't tell anyone else about it. If your findings just ended up gathering dust in science libraries, in scientific journals. During this panel discussion, we'll explore how communication in all its forms. I will build a little bit on what Isadora said, on Alex's video, on photography, and some other media, such as Mark Powell's excellent books, and give a more general description of communication. Explore how it works and how communication in all its forms can help bridge the gap between knowledge and action, and how a deeper understanding of the ocean can shape a more sustainable relationship with it. Because ocean literacy is more than just knowing the facts about the sea. It's about recognizing how intimately our lives are connected to it, economically, culturally, and emotionally. And it's about learning how to convey that connection in ways that inspire, care, and commitment. So before we start our panel discussion, I'd like to spend a few minutes framing our conversation. I will briefly touch on some key aspects of communication in general, what it is, the role we play as communicators, and the challenges we face today as a starting point for our dialogue. And then we'll open the floor to discuss with the panel and later to your questions. So can I have the first slide, please? Oh, there it is. So I put up here my definition of communication in a human context. Communication is also about how technical networks work, modems, computer networks. And there's a lot of similarities, but here we'll focus on the human aspect. As I mentioned, I have a role model. No, I didn't mention it, but everyone should know this esteemed gentleman. He's fabulous of bridging that gap and connecting with the audience. And he's 99 years old and still does his thing. Hats off. So, when we talk about communication, we often think of sending messages that we have crafted. Articles that we have written, books we've written, videos, in any shape or form. But real communication only happens when those messages are also received, understood, and reach the people they are intended to. So it's not just about what we say, write, or illustrate. But it's about how it is perceived, interpreted, and by whom. Because if the message never reaches the right audience, communication truly hasn't taken place. That's the equivalent of yelling in the forest at night. So in the context of ocean literacy, this distinction is vital. Facts alone does not change behavior. Understanding, connection, and relevance do. So, moving on to our role and task. Let me just ask, can you all see the 3 bullet points, or do I need to read them out to you? Just let me know. Oh, that should be good. So our role as communicators, scientists, or explorers is not only to inform, but to translate knowledge into meaning. We bridge the gap between data and facts and understanding, and between awareness and action. In doing so, we become educators, or teachers if you like. And as educators, our responsibility extends beyond accuracy and factual correctness. It includes clarity, empathy, and relevance to the audience, that is. And we must ensure that what we share is not only factually correct, but also comprehensible and compelling to those we hope to reach. In that context, we have some considerations. And here, that last bullet point is probably not visible to you. So it says crafting the message and content they will create, understanding the audience and the frame of reference, and choosing the right media and challenge below. So that figure I copied in as an example of how to frame a message for an audience that's not scientific. So on the left, there's a picture of a healthy, diverse coral reef. And when it degrades, it goes through some different stages until it ends up being barren, a wasteland that just grazed by urchins. And when it degrades, it goes through some transitions and ends up in some states that can be stable within some parameters. And that's why I chose to make this figure with some balls resting in some hollows like an egg tray. There is some stability, but within some confines. And those confines can be broken down, or the effect on the stability can be so severe that this ball essentially just rolls down. And the message I'm trying to illustrate here is going left, restoring ecosystems back to their pristine state requires far more energy and money because you're pushing against a gradient. So it's easier to preserve and protect than trying to repair afterwards. So effective communication begins long before we actually publish or speak. It starts asking, what do I want to say, to whom, and through what means? The way we frame the message depends on our audience's knowledge, interest, and cultural context. What resonates with policymakers might not move a local community. And what works for divers, like in this context, I don't have to explain what a regulator is or what decompression sickness is, might miss the mark with non-divers such as my bank counselor or my electrician. Equally important is the choice of media, whether we use video like Alex, photography like Henry, social media like Isadora, exhibition or events like this one, or direct engagement. Each has its own strengths and limitations that we need to consider. So recognizing these help tailor our message so it truly connects. So how do we get the message across? When you say, hey, am I getting the message across? If you say that to somebody in a daily discussion, I mean, how do I actually make myself understood? Do you understand what I say? But in this context, that has dual meaning, because it also means, how do I get my message from my outbox to your inbox? How do we ensure that it is received and read? So the first is about clarity, expressing ideas so they are correctly understood. And the second is about delivery, ensuring the message truly reaches the people it was intended to. So in today's crowded information landscape, messages easily get lost in the noise. You probably all suffer for overflowing inboxes that I do, or things that get buried by an algorithm you don't understand, ignored or filtered away like spam filters. So effective communication is not only about what we say, but how we make sure it actually gets across. In that sense, we're not only speakers or content creators, we're also navigators. We have to navigate this landscape, guiding our messages through an ocean of distractions to their intended destination. So the challenges we face, I've just listed them very short here: erosion of trust in science and fact, politics and polarization, information overload, as I just mentioned, and message fatigue. We get maxed out with everything we receive. And rapidly changing technology, algorithm, AI. Henry touched on that. We can touch a little bit more on that in our panel discussion. Misinformation, we can touch on that in our discussion, and blurred realities. So communication about the ocean today is more complex and challenging than ever, because we're operating in an environment where trust in science has eroded and where polarization can turn facts into opinions. So the airways are indeed crowded, attention span is short, algorithms constantly reshape how and to whom our messages travel. Add to that the AI and the flood of misinformation, and it becomes clear that truth now competes on unequal terms with noise and nonsense. Winston Churchill once famously quipped, "A lie gets halfway round the world before the truth gets its pants on in the morning." So, with that backdrop, communication as connection, understanding, and trust, we can start our panel. And I'm fortunate to have two of our distinguished panelists here with me already. So we can, your work both spans science, conversation, exploration. I think you both bring a unique perspective to this discussion and how we can foster some more ocean literate society. So I'd like to begin to ask each of you how to share briefly what ocean literacy means in your own field and why you think it matters today. So, Tiffany, do you have a good input on that?
Awesome. I think ocean literacy means connection, like you said, Peter.
Yeah.
And because I can't really decide what field I work in, as you saw earlier, I kind of just do whatever feels fun. I have to constantly iterate how to make that connection. So, like, I made this giant leatherback sea turtle art project with kids in New York because I wanted them to understand how big this turtle is. So I got this fabrication shop to make me a wooden kind of skeleton life size. And then I had the kids do cleanups until they could get enough trash from their own school waterway to cover it. And it took them 3 months. And by the time that they sorted the trash and looked at it, and they were like, "Oh, that's my fork from lunch. That's my chip bag," and covered the turtle, they were like, "Oh, we caused this," right? And that's a way that I chose to create literacy for them about not just how big this ocean animal is that they might never see, but also their impact, how trash is one of the main obstacles that turtles will face. So I create ocean literacy, hopefully, I try, by using unique combinations of knowledge and fun activities and art to spread awareness.
So what about you, Cathryn? What does ocean literacy mean to you personally and within your field? Is it about knowledge, empathy, stewardship, or all of those?
Well, I'll share a cautionary tale about ocean literacy and connection. One of my early jobs, I was very excited. Can we not hear me? Oh, well then stop waving your hands. You're distracting me.
You want me to sit in the middle? Right, okay, you're the boss.
So, as I was saying, before my bird friend over there interrupted me, cautionary tale. I got hired by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service as an environmental educator. And it was such a great job. My job was to go out into the field with the scientists and observe and learn what their research projects were, and then basically bring it back to the office and dumb it down. So I was meant to bring the scientific research down not only to the adult level with a column in the daily newspaper, but also into the schools in developing an educational curriculum for grades K through 12. And I charged into it with great enthusiasm, super excited. And I thought, well, one of the things I would like to do is create one of those matching games where there's a column and there might be pictures and words and you draw the line that connects, because it's connection that's important. I created the local fish, and I was going to have the students connect the scientific name, the genus and species, with the local name. And I thought it was really going to be great fun, so I worked on this project without asking any of my colleagues and the director who had hired me if this was going to be a project that was going to actually make a connection. And there were 3 islands. St. Thomas and St. John are located close to one another, but St. Croix was about 70 kilometers away. What I didn't know and didn't ask was the fish is the same, the genus and species is the same, the common name and the local lingo were different on an island 70 kilometers away. So I made a puzzle whose pieces did not connect because I didn't ask my colleagues, I didn't ask my direct supervisor, I just got all hot on the project and did a thing. And the thing didn't work because the language was not the same. And I think the biggest lesson for me with ocean literacy and also with keeping that job was you ask the right questions and of all things make certain we're speaking the same language. And now I'm not speaking very well at all. Hello? Are we still good? Okay, so that's my first lesson in ocean literacy was make certain we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, so and why you have already explained how we can reach those who feel disconnected from the sea.
I think we all have. Am I cutting out okay. The voices in my head are competing, I guess. I don't know. I think we all have an imperative to use whatever means possible to get the message across. Whether we're image makers or writers or whatever the walk is that we do. If you're a parent and you can go into a schoolroom and share your diving experiences with children, if you can volunteer, I think really we all have an imperative to do whatever we can.
So Tiffany, if I may ask you, how do you see how we can reach those who feel disconnected from the sea or see it as remote from their daily lives?
I mean, I think that's a challenge that everyone here feels in some way or another, right? Whether you're a communicator or not, we're all divers. We are like, duh, the ocean's awesome. But even to like our families, right? My family lives by water, but I told you, my mom doesn't swim. She's like, why do you like it so much? Like, why are you spending your whole life on this? So like, it's a challenge, right? I think we can use human elements. Like my mom will be like, fine, I will recycle the plastic bottle because you are such a brat. And I'm like, thank you so much. You love me. So you can use a human element to make people care about the ocean if they don't have that connection, right? Like a protagonist in a film to help you care about the reef that he cares about. Or, you know, the fisherman's son who asks his fisherman dad not to fin a shark, right? Because he has learned somewhere. So I think we can use different elements to communicate that, or art or mediums as needed.
So to expand a little bit on that, where you live in a day where the news coral reef bleaching and stuff. So how can storytelling, imagery, and personal experience help convey the urgency and foster engagement without resorting to doom and gloom all the time?
I actually think we have to show doom and gloom, right? Like that would be like saying, I love corals, and like we were saying, climate change doesn't exist. I've worked for coral organizations that refused to say climate change exists, and you cannot responsibly be a coral org and not admit that there's something going on, right? I think we have to address that elephant in the room in a way that doesn't leave people crying on the floor. That said, I think you do that by giving people hope, right? And if you treat hope instead of as this like floaty, happy emotion, but more like teaching people that we can have a goal. Maybe that's lowering carbon emissions. Maybe that's lessening plastic. And agency being like, okay, in school we can do this. And you have that skill, then we can help build a pathway away from doom and gloom while still acknowledging it exists.
Cathryn, have you?
You know, one example that Guy and I found when we were in the Pacific, we did a 3.5-year voyage through the Pacific to what the yacht owner on an expedition yacht called the no-fly zone. We specifically traveled by yacht to places that you couldn't reach by airplane. And while we were in the Pacific, a really important study was published indicating bright spots in the Pacific. And these were areas that researchers had found were thriving despite certain problems, despite warming oceans or acidification and other situations. They didn't exactly know why these areas were thriving, but they pointed out these are bright spots. And it gave a great deal of hope, but then it also gave us the opportunity to juxtapose the blight spots by highlighting where areas are really thriving and coral reefs are sustaining themselves and fish populations are up, and looking at how beautiful a bright spot looks, and then you compare the blight spot, it really pulls at people's hearts, and they're like, oh, we don't want this beautiful thing to look like that. So that got a lot of attention, especially in the Pacific, and I think it helped bring a lot more money to research the bright areas because we didn't know why they were still sustaining themselves. And actually, I think some coral samplers were taken from the bright areas that had learned how to survive in higher temperatures and transplanted into some areas that were not thriving. So that, I don't know what the research ongoing has revealed about that, but that was something that we got to see firsthand, to actually dive on some of the places that were still doing okay. And it gave me a lot of hope because you get tired of seeing the doom and gloom. But as Tiffany mentioned, we need both. We need to do both.
That brings me on to the next related subject, which is probably the most challenging and thorny issues. And that is about the barriers and the misinformation that we face out in the media landscape. So in an age of misinformation and polarization, how do we maintain credibility and trust? Would you like to give it a go first?
It's a hard question, right? Like, how do you believe anything? I think we're absolutely in a crisis of belief and trust, and like ask any teenager, right? Like a bunch of you are parents. They don't believe anything, right? They've grown up in an age where everything is online and everything is true or not, and so they're skeptical. And I think we have to bring it back to, I mean, things that we might find as common, right? Science or humanity, values, things like that, but there's no solution. If there was, we'd be a lot more on the same page.
Yeah. I think also those of us that know better need to help others do better. And I'm gonna pick on AI a little bit here. So many of my non-diving friends will send me the cute videos of, most recently it was the saturation diver working at depth using giant tools to open valves. And this octopus came up and perched next to the toolbox and began handing the tools to the hard hat worker. And more than 4 of my non-diving friends sent me this and were like, this is so cute. I'm like, it's so not real. And they don't know any better. I know that that octopus would steal those tools and never give them back. because that's happened when you go to photograph an octopus and it reaches out and grabs your gear. That octopus is not that smart to be able to open the toolbox and hand the guy the spanner wrench and then give him the next tool. And we know better, so those of us that know better, we have to help the people that don't and point out if something is AI, we can say, that's a lovely piece of AI art or AI storytelling. It's not actually real. Like the polar bear that climbs up the side of the expedition vessel and plays on the back deck. Don't think that happened.
Yeah.
So truth-telling is important, and that opens the whole video question on how do we tell the truth with AI, which is a different box to open. But
I find it very, very challenging and scary because, as you have probably seen yourself, some of this AI is becoming scaringly realistic. I've seen that video, and at first I thought, wait, what? Is it real?
Right.
And then, no, that can't be. Well, I know because I have a scientific background, but it's very persuasive. But as you say, if it's fun and entertaining, it doesn't do any harm if people know it's fake. And that is the main issue. So I have spent a lot of time doing a magazine to form a policy on the use of AI in our publications and media outlets. And it's very simple. Any kind of illustration, whether it's created by AI or good old school Photoshop, must not be construed in a way so it's able to deceive. It needs to be a drawing, a rendition, a collage, a comic, or have some kind of quality so it is immediately clear that this is not a real photo. Because if we use images that can create any doubt, we lose trust and credibility. And that is our most important asset as communicators, as teachers, as media. And it must not be risked at any point. And if any other media out there with self-respect would have similar policies, and I hope they do, I haven't scanned the whole media landscape, then we will be in a better place because everyone needs to be acutely aware how deceptive AI-created images has become. And I think the most sensible of us do that, but we can all be fooled. Even I have in a few instances. So the other aspect of misinformation is how to deal with the politicization of environmental policies. We have on both sides of the Atlantic some government that calls environmental protections frauds. Those who follow the news would have noted that only a couple of days ago, I think the day before yesterday, the UN panel on imposing a climate tax and restrictions on shipping was shot down by the US government. And the chap in the White House called it green scam. And that is depressing and scary that we are up against that because, of course, people believe it. Sure. And it doesn't make any sense, so how do you contend with that kind of idiocy all the time? It exasperates me, I must admit. But looking forward, what gives you hope? This is what gives me hope.
Yes.
This is my grandson, Otto. We have given him books, toys about animals and stuff, and he's taking a keen interest. The daycare center related to me, well, he's kind of the odd kid out because all the other kids go out there and play ball game, but Otto, he's in the bushes looking for small critters and studying. So I'm not only proud, but this makes me a little bit more confident that we have a little bit of brighter hope because kids are not born pre-impregnated with certain beliefs. And there was something I realized in a completely different context. I followed some discussion about racism, and it's nothing to do with this, but some research said, well, kids are not taught to be they're not born racist. Somebody teaches them. So we can indeed instill in them beliefs and good habits. So this is what gives me hope. And we can reach the children. Of course, if he grows up to be a scientist, well, he's going to find his own way. It will still take like 20 years, and we still have some challenges we need to address beforehand. So what gives you hope for the future?
Well, I think for all of us, we can say that Kyla gave us all huge hope today with talking about, obviously she's a unicorn in terms of having these both two parents that are extraordinary members of the diving industry, but she could have decided that that wasn't for her. She could have said, yeah, that's your thing and I'm not interested in it, but she took to the water and now she's the next generation of underwater ambassadors. So that gives me hope. And I don't have a child or a grandchild that I know of, but I do have some cool nieces and nephews. And one of my nephews is going on a film shoot with us in Florida just after DEMA. We're going to put him in the water at Crystal Springs with the manatees. And he's in the States, they have Cub Scouts program, and the Cub Scout magazine this month is a manatee. So we're going to put him in the water under permit. We're filming, but I'm going to whore this kid out easily because he's cute and he's a Cub Scout, and he's going to take the magazine and be reading it to a manatee if all goes as planned. If everything goes to plan, he's going to have this interaction where he shows the manatee what he's learned about manatees. So,
what about you? Have you had any encouraging experiences with people?
Yeah. I mean, what gives me hope is action now. Like, I think the next generation is important. I am admittedly not a kid person, so it's not the thing that pulls me, but I think like people taking action now, people who don't give up, stories where there is like the freak coral that's not dying, right? And people are interested, why? And lately actually on expeditions, there have been a lot of older people, like retirees, who have come up to me and they're like, you guys are so stupid. We are old, we have time, we have money, use us. And then when you help them get a connection, I've seen someone be like, I'm gonna fund all of Scripps College marine science because you told me about a coral. Like I watched that happen. And so I think there's enough actions now that we can all amplify and focus on to stay the course, even in weird, dark times.
That's excellent. I want to add a story that Paolo told me. So we were meant to be 4 panelists, and we're down to 2. One had an illness, and the other had a canceled flight. But Paolo was explaining that he works in Madeira with monk seals, and 20 years ago, no one cared, and they were killing them, and now they've protected them, and just recently one was injured, and the second generation of fishermen, since they started this protection initiative, called and reported the animal injured, and then stayed with the animal to make certain that it was in the same area when the veterinarians arrived. And then the fishermen were like, hurry, 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 you have to get her. What took you so long? Why did it take you so long? This animal needs your care right this minute. And they were like, da 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 da. You need to help this animal, and you need to hurry, and you need to do it now. And he just sat back and was like, this is working. You guys are mad at me because I didn't get here fast enough when your grandparents used to be eating these animals. So the generational effect is happening. And he was really proud. He was hoping to share that story with you. And I don't know if I did it justice, but I was happy to hear that news, that the younger generations are turning the tables on us a little, and good for them. And good for them to be righteous pissed off about the ways in which we've exploited and we haven't taken good care. So they deserve to be putting us to the task.
It's also my hope that our acknowledgement now that other animals are sentient are giving us a much deeper appreciation that they are just also citizens on this planet.
Yes.
It has certainly probably been the single point where I have moved myself the furthest, because I don't think I ever went so far to think fish were dumb, but realizing that even crabs can feel fear, that the medications that we flush out in the sewage system also alter the behaviors of marine creatures, that the small cleaner wrasse, if you place a white dot on their forehead where they can't see it, and you show them a mirror, they recognize themselves, they are self-aware, and they would try and rub off that spot. So all the way down the food chain to simpler organisms, we cannot anymore take it for granted that these are just dumb animals. Now when I dive, even the smallest critter that takes care of its young, protects its territory, try to get food and shelter, are essentially just doing the very same as we do.
Right.
I have a different respect for living creatures.
And Mr. Moderator, did you have a tipping point at which you had this realization?
No, I think it's a gradual realization, because most of us are already aware that octopuses have remarkable intelligence. And I think they are particularly interested because that's a mollusk.
Yes.
Physiological and anatomically, they are so different. Their brains go around their throat, their esophagus, and they have small ganglions, small brains in their arms. So their neurological anatomy is fundamentally different from ours. Yet they're capable of solving problems, and sometimes to a degree that really surprises us, because they can, in a very basic sense, use tools.
Yes.
And that I find very intriguing and a sobering reminder that we are maybe not all that supreme beings and special in that way, and we should respect their feelings and sentiments too.
I agree.
So, are we getting to the bottom of this and time for questions?
Yeah, I'd love to hear, especially tipping points. If anybody has a tipping point story in their own realization or in their family practices, up the line generationally, things that we once did at our grandparents' house, or maybe we don't do that anymore with regard to ocean and environment. I'm curious to know if anybody's got a tipping point story.
Okay, so tipping point.
Yes.
It's a bit not nice to hear. The first time I saw a duck getting killed, it was by my neighbor. She hung it upside down and made many cuts, and he died in like 1 hour, so I decided to not eat duck again. That was my tipping point. I recommend people becoming vegetarian, so yay for that. Not many takers. Okay, tough crowd. Okay.
At least Humane Harvest.
I tried.
At the very least, Humane Harvest.
I actually wanted to ask you guys, because we've been talking a lot about AI and social media and pictures and all of this, and you actually touched on a point about AI. And I don't know if you are aware, you probably are, about the environmental repercussions of AI. And I would love to hear your thoughts, because it's almost inevitable for everyone to use AI nowadays. And it's become quite useful for some practices and just silly for others. Because, like you said, it was a video of an octopus taking the parts of another diver, and it's somehow harmless because it's just for fun. But is it really harmless? Because in a way, it does have those environmental repercussions. I'm not done, sorry. Let me just do all of the questions to remember that one. I also would like to ask, because we did talk about what we can do for the youth and how we can kind of use it as a hope, not use it, sorry, wrong word, but like how we can see it as a hopeful future. And diving, like other type of sports, can be quite expensive. Although Kayla is quite amazing, I'm not taking any part of that. It is, like you said, a unicorn. Okay, it's a one in a lifetime experience. Do you think there is any possibility that we could create somehow programs for like social reinteraction? I'm not sure how to say the English word, I'm sorry. For like kids or young adults, like not actual grown people, who don't have a lot of education when it comes to environment, to ocean facts, to anything like that, to be able to access these diving materials, these diving sources, everything like that, in order to become more educated about the ocean and to care more about the ocean. Do you think this could be a possibility? And as of now, do you think that it's like super far away? It's something that as of now it's more far away. I will leave these questions just for now.
I'll answer that one because it's a story close to home. We live on Fayal Island in the Azores, and the local children there are enrolling in a program in which they're not only learning the traditional sailing with the traditional boats, but they're also learning to swim and learning to snorkel. So they're getting their snorkeling equipment. And one of the ways that they're funding that is through the local whale museum. The children are learning to collect plastics from the beaches. And depending upon the way the wind blows, sometimes there's no plastic at all, and then other times we get a lot of plastic debris. So they're learning to, they're going out and collecting the plastic, they're sorting it, and they're recycling it basically into a machine that prints out plastic clipboards and plastic keychains. And so it's reused plastic, but that goes, the proceeds from that goes into a fund that supplies them with more snorkeling equipment and more water sports equipment. So they're actually turning marine debris into the next set of tools that they need in order to explore in the ocean. And Carla Damaso was the spearhead of that at OMA, and she's a force, and she's a force for good. And the kids that are learning from her are really getting a great lesson. So that's one of the bright spots right here, close to home.
Yeah, I can add to that. You mentioned the bar of entry into diving. And indeed, it is an expensive sport to enter. I remember when I was a student, how long it took me to save for my first dive equipment. I had to borrow bits and pieces. So how do we lower that bar of entry? I live in a country where no place is further than 50k from the coastline. So we all have a relationship with water and the beach and a relationship with water. That helps a lot. There's been some interesting developments because a lot of local tourist offices have now set up in protected areas, created stone reefs with varied marine life as snorkeling tracks. They have actually made tracks with buoys so kids can go out in shallow water, maybe just 2-3 meters, and see different types of biotopes. It can be a stone reef, gravel. As long as they can just see some crabs, a few fish, the kids are happy. And I also know from a number of the dive centers that they complain that they sell less and less dive gear. And we all heard also at one of the presentation earlier that the revenue in the dive industry is just nosediving. It has been for many years. But one sector is actually expanding rapidly. That's snorkeling. Yeah. And free diving and just swimming, and kids are taking to it. And I take sort of a great comfort in seeing that happen, because that creates connection with the ocean environment without being costly. It's easy, and they think it's a fun vacation holiday activity to do, and it draws in tourists too. Yeah. So that's a step in the right direction.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll add that I've written about a ton of programs where, like you've both identified, you teach local kids to swim first, right? Like, forget diving, right? They don't know how to swim. And so there's like awesome programs in Indonesia. In the Keys, we got the Florida Panthers to donate $300,000 to teach all our local kids to swim, because they live on this island chain and they don't touch the water, right? And that's a tragedy. And so you start with swimming, and then you work in the scuba, you get the scuba shops to donate the classes, you find ways to get the community involved. But yeah, the bar is way too high, and we can try to be more creative and work as communities to lower it, but I think we have to start with the very basics first, right? Like water comfort, water literacy, before we even think about scuba. And then on the AI front, yeah, it uses so much water, right? And it uses so much energy, and we don't even think about it. Like Google has the automated AI summary now that we all are trained to use, and that uses like 10 times more than a traditional search, and we don't even have that choice. So it's happening whether we want it to or not, and I don't think we have those choices. Those choices are being made for us. So I think we either fight big tech, which is very crazy and hard and big, or we find different ways to find our impact scaled back, right? But it's gonna continue to be a growing problem that we can't solve, in a discussion here.
Right.
Yeah, find different weird sneak attacks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Can we do more questions?
Any more questions out there?
Sorry. Okay. Hi, good afternoon. How are you? So I wanted to ask you, I'm a marine biologist. I worked in Spain. I'm from Spain. And I found quite easy to spread awareness with people with my own culture. Although then I went to Africa, working on coral restoration, and in the Middle East. And then I kind of struggled a little to spread that awareness with people with different cultures. Because of course I'm very, very aware of my footprint, but it's different in other countries. So how do you address that difference in cultures?
That is indeed a very good question. As I mentioned in my introduction, it's about acknowledging and understanding the mind frame of the recipient. It can be cultural, it can be educational, it can be age. What I didn't touch on, but I can do it very briefly, we have two types of communication. We have a two-way communication, which we have now because we have a dialogue. But a lot of media that we have, when we write a book, we write an article in a magazine or do a video, it's a one-way communication. And as Isadora touched on, we are reaching out to strangers, but we cannot just sort of blurt out in anything without any consideration. So what I do personally, I try to imagine one or few persons, virtual persons, to say, could this person be a representative of the target group I'm trying to reach? And then I am, in my mind, addressing that person. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of that recipient. And we have to do some educated guesses. And we can narrow it down by age, by gender, by education, a lot of parameters, and get it about right. We will never get it totally right, but we can narrow it down. But I think the cultural reference is probably the one that is the most tricky, because how can we positively understand how other cultures see nature? We're probably seen, many of us who has traveled out in Asia, how some of the locals, they do dynamite fishing and use cyanide. And why is that? Okay, they need to eat, but I don't think they have any appreciation that they're actually destroying their livelihood. So what do we do? Do we yell and kick and scream? How do we change the Chinese desire for shark fins? It's cultural.
You bring that up. I'll add 2 points to that. Number one, those of us who are traveling and we see a need and want to help, I think the very first thing is just like my faux pas culturally, not asking what the language was, what the local lingo was. I think the first thing we need to do with our big open hearts is go find the local people and ask them what they need. and then ask them how we can help them, and then listen carefully to what they say. Rather than us going out with our level of awareness and inserting ourselves into communities and trying to make change, I think we need to go sit next to the people that we identify as the change makers and ask, how can we help you make the change that you want to see in the world? And secondly, this is leading into the story of the Chinese divers. I had a task of taking a group of Chinese divers through an open water course, and I don't speak Chinese, so we hired a Mandarin speaking instructor, and she said, I will translate, you speak and I'll translate to them. And she was actually a dive master, so she couldn't do the certification. And I started to explain why we don't touch the coral, and she said, I'm very sorry, but you are doing it wrong. And I said, excuse me? She goes, I'm so very sorry, but you are doing it wrong. You can't say that. And I said, explain. And I was saying, please don't touch the coral because it's fragile and you might harm it. And she said, you must say, please don't touch the coral because if you touch the coral, you will die. And I'm very sorry that I don't have the medicine that I could use to save you. And I said, I can't say that. But you can. You just go right ahead and say whatever you need to say because I won't understand a word of it. Back to communication. We just have to do the very best we can.
I have a little grounding rule that may help. It's called connection first, conviction second. Yeah, I know. So again, we have to sort of put ourselves in the shoes of a recipient and start with curiosity, not correction. And reflect back that understanding. Start with a dialogue, because once you first win them over and they feel you're on their side and they understand that you respect their feelings, sentiments, and background, then you can connect with them on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So my rule, simply connection first, and then you convince them afterwards.
Yeah. Thank you all very much.